Yeah, I'm back on LinkedIn. I'm back on YouTube, but the stream is different, right? So that's a bit of a problem. All right. Sorry about that. If you can hear me, say something. Hi. Sorry, I don't know what happened, Mr. Patil, and we are running out of time. Technical difficulty on the 102nd episode. Second episodes. That's weird. That's very weird. But I hope you can hear me now. It's audible. Perfect. So we were talking about U.S. and China, how U.S. has been rattled by what's happening as far as the whole China place considered. So a lot of people said that the tariffs won't work, right? And a lot of people said that the tariffs are not the right way to solve the right problem. So the problem is correct that US has essentially killed its manufacturing, and because of its killed manufacturing, US has lost a lot of its ability. However, what's true is, though, no, it's not the first topic, Mr. Patil. We discussed a few things before. Uh, uh, we were talking about GST, we were talking about the consumption story, and then we shifted to China's military parade, Mr. Trump's, response to it, and then the whole tariff debate. So it's essentially the second story. But look at what's happened as far as the whole tariff play is considered. So you remember that US warned the pharma companies with a $250 billion tariff. Sorry, 250% tariff, right? You remember? 250% tariff for pharma companies. Eli Lilly has planned to invest 27 billion for new manufacturing facilities across US. Johnson and Johnson $55 billion. We've discussed it. Next 4 years. Roche $50 billion, the Swiss company. AstraZeneca $50 billion in the next 5 years. Novartis $23 billion in the next 5 years. Sanofi $20 billion and Biogen $2 billion. So just these one, two, three, four, five companies are essentially looking at investing over $125 billion in US, right, over the next 5 years. Why? To set up new manufacturing facilities. So that's the effect of that. Now, where is that concern that, oh, we cannot manufacture in US? Where is that concern, right? Oh, that it's cheaper in China or it's cheaper in India, so let's offshore. It doesn't make economic sense to actually manufacture in US, right? All of that was bullshit, right? Bullshit. All it took was some serious political will, and everything got turned. Everything got turned, right? That's why I say outcomes in business are essentially the result of the political will, right? That's what happened. So a president came and said, hey, if you don't manufacture in US, I'm going to have a 250% tariff on you. And then all those companies started scrambling to make in US, and they're investing $250 billion in the next 4 or 5 years, which is essentially some $20 billion a year, right? Does the US really need those manufacturing jobs? US used to do high value stuff. Now that's what the McKinsey type said. So what McKinsey type said was that, hey, we cannot be doing these menial jobs. What we will be doing is the high value stuff. So US had active manufacturing, active steel, arsenal of democracy. We've talked a lot about this, how steel proved to be the arsenal of democracy, a book reference, something that Mr. Peter Navarro recently called out. Now they moved away. They said it. Now some McKinsey type guy said, that hey, we can offshore these jobs to China, cheaper labor, everything good, and we'll upskill ourselves. So we'll go higher in design and implementation and so on and so forth. And these people will be doing all the manufacturing menial work. Okay, and we'll still be above the way. So we'll transport all the polluting industries to these guys. We'll keep the high end stuff. What those idiots didn't realize was that once you give somebody a menial job, it's not gonna be menial forever, right? It's not gonna be menial forever. So a manufacturing, everything is second order effects, right? Once somebody gets a manufacturing job, it's a low end job. It's a low end product. Maybe let's say you're just making nuts and bolts, right? What happens next is this issue. Somebody who's making nuts and bolts starts making toys, right? Somebody who starts making toys starts making, automotive stuff. Somebody who's making sewing machines starts making cars. And I'm not giving a parable here. Toyota was a sewing machine company, right? It started making cars, right? Somebody who's making tuning forks starts making automotive sector stuff, right? Musical instruments, they start making automotive stuff. Now that's again not a parable. Yamaha was a tuning fork company. You see the Yamaha logo, it has tuning forks like this, right? 3 tuning forks, because Tora Koisu Yamaha began the company as a tuning fork company. Now tuning fork is not a very high end thing, right? But it led to a lot of high end thing. So US does need jobs, because manufacturing, what it provides, and that's what India's problem also remained, right? No manufacturing. Now, manufacturing gives the bottom of the pyramid stable jobs, which lead to many second order effects, right? Services job restrict the economy in a particular way. Yes, they are high end. There's no low end engagement at all, right? And then there's also little scope for value creation, because once you're creating a product, those products create ancillaries. But once you're selling a service, all you do is sell a service, right? That's what these people do. Like the IT guys, they've been for 40 years. Infosys was 1976, TCS 1976, Infosys 1981. For 40 years, they've been doing the same work, right? Essentially. So US does need manufacturing jobs. Everybody needs manufacturing jobs. India needs manufacturing jobs. If a country is to succeed, manufacturing is like the greatest pillar that the country needs. And glad that US realized it, though it could be late, right? So thank God that we didn't have the same mindset, which we did, by the way. If you listen to Rajan kind of people, right? What did he say in a very, very big interview with Rahul Kamal? Our strength is services. We should stick to services. Manufacturing is not our forte. Let's not do manufacturing. It doesn't even create high-end jobs anyway. Services is where the money is. Every country has its own, you know, strengths. Our strength is a workforce. We should do services. Now that's what that guy says. And he said, don't invest in semiconductors. Don't invest in all of these things. It's not going to yield anything. Now, that kind of thinking just kills the entire country. If you want to kill a country, if you want to just ruin it forever, that's the thought process you take forward. So just take this example, right? 5 companies, 150, 120, 150 billion dollars coming to US, just basis political will. Just basis political will. Don't forget that. Moving on. Russian president's ultimatum: end war via talks or I will by force. Some rhetoric there. Moving on. Trump is also trying to balance India. Now, you remember, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember the first statement made by Trump, right? That India offered to zero tariffs, but it's getting late now. Everybody saw it as a rambling. I said that, hey, remember who told you first? I said that it's basically a call that I'm back on the table, right? And that's exactly where it's moving forward. We get along with India, but they kill us with tariffs, says Trump. We get along with India. You get it? Now, people obviously don't read this as they might, if they actually knew if they actually read the person, right? So if you read Art of the Deal or whatever, his journey, if you follow his journey, this is how he comes back on the table. Very big ego guy, but they're desperate. US is desperate, and whatever is happening as far as the whole India play is considered, it's made US very desperate, because that's what the American right said, right? American left and American right, that's where they differed. American right said that American left said Russia is the enemy, fight Russia. American right said China is the enemy, right? And American right said if China is the enemy, India is the counterweight to China. And this, though, 2016, there's a whole ring of fire that US created around China. There was India, there was other countries, there was Japan, and so on and so forth, right? So US wanted to encircle China's influence, encircle China's might. But then they had this very, very bad idea of trying to arm twist India and getting Russia on the to end the war. Didn't work out for them at all, and now India has begun warm relationships with China. Right. So enough about geopolitics. But the fact is, whatever happens tomorrow, right? All the entrepreneurial action that you're gonna see tomorrow is basically because some politician thought that that was the good idea, right? And if that politician made a good move, the country progresses. If he screws up, the country gets screwed. That's how strongly entrepreneurs have to depend on political will, right? Entrepreneurs often tout the story that, yeah, captain of my soul, ruler of my destiny, and so on and so forth. No, it's basically just politics which is playing up. Speaking of politics, saving GST has happened. Just It's a very perfect segue to today's episode. GST is essentially India's political move for domestic consumption, right? We talked about this. 12% gets abolished. 12% shifts to 5%. 28% to 18%, and then there's whole, they've shifted a lot. It's just huge. What were we talking about? We said that the PVR kind of cinema guys said that there should be GST of 5% for tickets below 300. That's what they talked about. It's not happening. GST for 5% is just for tickets below 100. Right? What did we talk about as far as smartphones were considered? We said smartphones were also looking at 5%, right? There's no news on smartphones as far as large screen TVs, ACs, they have come down, but smartphones, I don't know what's happened with smartphones. There's no news as far as smartphones are considered. Pharmaceuticals, obviously 5%. So they've basically rationalized all they want to do, and it's gonna hit on the first day of Navratri. So you see the perfect storm. You see the perfect storm. That perfect storm is actually a very wrong word. You see, what can you see? What would be the right way to put it? They've created a perfect situation. Unfortunately, it's not that metaphoric, poetic, but they've created the perfect situation for the next 2 quarters to be very brilliant, right? Including this one and the next one. So what they want is, as soon as the festive season clicks in, right, all the money goes to the consumption sector, so that they can come back to the consumption guys and say, producer guys, and say, hey, you sold a lot, right? Why don't you set more factories here? And once they set more factories or announce, it's gonna kick. It's gonna kick in really, really big ways. Didn't carbonated and flavored drink get 40%? Yes, because it's more or less. So you know what? I'll tell you something. It's related to MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. How do you improve a country in the great way, in a very holistic way? How do you improve a country in a holistic way? You make sure that the people are healthy, right? Because that's the first step towards making the country healthy financially, right? If people are buried under physical duress, under illnesses, under different kind of unfortunate circumstances, you cannot expect the GDP to be doing well. And even if GDP does well in that case, it doesn't matter, right? Because your populace is not healthy, it's not being able to live a good life. And how do you actually reduce your medical spend per capita? What's the best way to reduce the medical spend per capita? You improve the daily food consumption of the populace, right? That's what you do. You improve the daily food consumption of the populace. Now, how can you improve the food consumption, daily food consumption of the populace? You actually make the food available, you know, healthier, right? Or you make the unhealthy food which is available, you place a deterrent on that. So that's what Make America Healthy Again is, right? They talk about all the processed foods. They are very anti-processed foods. They are very anti, bad medicines, SSRIs, and so on and so forth. They are very pro, uh, you know, uh, health movement. So if you look at RFK Jr., he's been doing health campaigns across the country where they actually do push-ups and pull-ups and so on and so forth, and invite people to do 10 push-ups, or sorry, 50 push-ups and 10 pull-ups and whatnot, right? India's version. So why do I follow US politics? Because India is just very, very similar. So when they did this, they came late, by the way. India started doing the National Yoga Day and stuff like that, right? National Yoga Day, all the whole Shri Anaj. Now, what is Shri Anaj? Shri Anaj is obviously the whole protein, and basically moving away from wheat and going towards healthier grains and so on and so forth. It also has financial ramifications, but it actually helps the health outcomes as well, right? Because that indirectly, in a very beautiful way, reduces the hospital spends. And once that happens, the country just flourishes like never before, right? Some comments there. So didn't come, not against it, but Reliance had dived in it. So great. Reliance doesn't need, in at least in the consumer play, Reliance doesn't need SOPs, right? At least in the consumer play, because they're just infinite, right? It doesn't matter. Mr. Tiwari says packaged snacks like namkeen got 5%, I think. Now the huge list is huge. I am very, very curious on what happens to smartphones, because those guys were really going for 5%, and they said now the government, smartphones, cars and bikes, right? These are a very good indicator of the economic strength. If people are buying phones, if people are buying cars, if people are buying bikes, that means people are being able to spend on things that are important to them, right? Now, how many cars do we sell? We sell 40 lakh cars in a year, right? That was decreasing. It's been decreasing. How many phones do we buy? We buy 150 million phones, right? 150 million phones is 15 crore phones a year. Those are smartphones, by the way. Total number of phones, 33 crores, right? How many cars do we buy? We buy, is 150 million? Yeah, 33 crores. 4 million, 40 lakh cars. Yeah. And how many bikes do we buy? We buy a crore, 1.2 crore bikes in a year, right? Now, bikes and cars, GST sorted it out, right? Smartphones, I don't know. I don't know, right? Should we search? Has anybody searched for it? If people have searched for it, please let me know. I'm very curious about the whole smartphone play, because they killed their PLI as well, right? They said you have, you've been getting PLI for 8 years now. Now we're going to use that PLI somewhere else. So that's what the government said to the smartphone guys. But yeah, moving on. So GST is a huge story. It's going to be a developing story for many days to come. So prepare to be bored by it. But every news is an opportunity to look into the future, right? Because it's going to be very, very interesting. They've increased tobacco, the tobacco and all of those, that goes 40% and so on and so forth. So it's pretty interesting what's happening. Vodafone promoters are looking at diluting some stakes. Government wants external players to come and bring in money, right? Because probably what they've realized is that these Aditya Birla guys, they can't invest more money, man. They can't feed the monkey anymore, right? The government can't invest money. Well, somebody's got to feed the monkey. Who is going to be that person, right? So they want new stakeholders in that play, and once they enter, it's gonna be a bit better, right? That's what they are hoping. So sinks banks and NOC to raise 7,000 crores. So they wanted to, they have their whole, optic network. So Vodafone tried to raise money on its optic network. It tried to bring in PE players to get involved in that optic network, raise some money there. It couldn't do that. So now what it's doing, it's trying to pledge its optic network to the bank, and uh, you know uh, the what's going to happen is that they're going to pledge the optic network, take a loan, and this loan is going to be a high priority loan, right? So they're just pledging it. I'm frankly bored of Vodafone story, but there is a lesson. There is a lesson in the Vodafone story. Can you tell me what that lesson is, right? uh, Promoters are going to offload 13% stake while government retains holdings. Government can't let it die also. So what is the lesson with Vodafone? Can you guess what's the lesson? The lesson is, do not hire Abhishek Bachchan. That is the lesson. That is the lesson. Uh, yes. Ordnance factories companies hit exports of 3,500 crores. That's very good news for the defense sector. Moving on. Nayara is in trouble. We've talked a lot about Nayara being in trouble. Indian imports, crude imports have shrunk. And even though they've shrunk from everywhere, Russia has grown 5%. Now, why would Indian imports shrunk? I'm very curious on why imports are shrinking. But in this particular month, overall crude imports to India dipped due to maintenance at BPCL's Bina and Indian Oil's Baroni refineries. So because these two refineries are like, they make the bulk of imports, right? Indian Oil and BPCL, uh, and they are under maintenance. Essentially, that's Indian imports go low. Drop in supplies from other sources reflects lower processing requirements and domestic demand weakens. Overall refined product consumption fell 4.2, and so on and so forth. So that is also a very interesting play. How is the demand for crude reducing in India? Is that a signal? Is something happening that we are not being able to see? The world is not being able to see. How are we like? How are these imports falling month on month? It's just very strange, right? They're not growing as they used to. So if you look at it, uh, overall crude imports fell 4% to 4.5 MBD, a global real-time data analytics firm, and then that was that, right? Overall refined product consumption fell 4.2 year on year in July, and zero point 0.5 in April July period. So that's exactly what I was thinking. So I can't say that, Mr. Tiwari, because I don't know, right? This data has to be very, very solid. But is it ethanol? Is it solar? Petrol is still rising. Petrol and diesel are still rising. So it cannot be ethanol. And ethanol, can it start making actual dent? Is it even possible? That's a very interesting play. Speaking of what's very interesting, services activity at a 15-year high. So you remember manufacturing activity at a 17.5-year high. You remember manufacturing's PMI, right? Purchasing Managers Index 69.7 or something. That was huge. Service industry's PMI is also pretty high. It is 62.9 in August. It was 60.5 in ethanol. Now, Mr. Tarun says EV and ethanol. Again, we'll have to do some real heavy research on whether this crude import is actually falling or is it just a temporary blip in the overall graph, right? That's gonna be very interesting. But it should be a very good sign that something is happening in the Indian ethanol play, and makes sense to buy those stocks, definitely. So services industry is taking at a 15-year high, manufacturing at a 17-year high. What does this tell you? What does this tell you? I've talked a lot about leading indicators, right? Leading and So manufacturing is a leading indicator, because whatever happens as far as this particular indicator right now, it's going to show its effects like 2 or 3 months later down the line. But services, it means instant money, right? I mean, it's still a leading indicator, but less latency. So that's very, very interesting. India is buzzing, and all the country is hoping for right now is that it can have 2 good quarters to show to the world that, hey, consumption grew this much, the economy grew 8%, and if the economy grows 8%, this is where the money is, right? This is where the money is. That's the entire ambition. Unorganized sector, number of firms rises, jobs dip, signals self-employment shift. Now again, this is a very big validation of what we've discussed at Thinkers Frequency. If you remember, we talked about how job data, you cannot just look at EPFO, right? If somebody comes to you and says, hey, India's GDP is a farce because look at the EPFO numbers, they didn't grow as much while the GDP grew this percent, that means it's an unequal growth, and growth is happening just at the top of the pyramid, people are not benefiting, and so on and so forth. What is the perfect argument to make in that story? That, hey, maybe you're talking about formal jobs. Maybe you're talking about jobs that are under EPFO. But what about Mudra loans? Are Mudra loans rising? If Mudra loans are rising, isn't that economic activity? Why does a person take Mudra loan? When does a person get a Mudra loan? To start a company, to start a small business, to start a kabadi store, to start a perchune shop, and so on and so forth, right? If that is growing, how are you saying that employment is not happening? What about the number of companies that are getting registered? Are they growing? If the companies are registered are growing, maybe those companies are not big enough to actually have compliances like EPFO, right? Maybe they are under compliant right now and they're still working, because why would a person start a company? Now that person might say, oh, the company can be a shell company. Sure, absolutely. But is all, you consider all the new companies as shell companies? There must be some percentage of companies which are actually real, right? That means growth. Manrega decline, as Mr. Patil said, that signals that Manrega is the worst employment opportunity for the rural workforce, right? If Manrega is declining, that means rural workforce actually has an employment option. That's why they're not taking the rural employment guarantee scheme. So all of these things have to be looked. So if somebody makes that argument, viewers of Thinkers Frequency can counter it in a very beautiful and basically indefatigable way, right? So moving on, and this is what these people have said. Establishments employed higher workers fell 13%, while number of establishment grew. So moving on, self-employment is going. Is Mudra loan easy to get, or again banks round with babus? Now I have heard very good things, Mr. Tiwari. I've heard. I told you about Shambhu Bhaiya, right? Who used to run a kabadi store and is now running that and also a very nicely run shop. He took a Mudra loan, 16 lakhs or something. I am not sure of the number, but he took a Mudra loan. It worked really well for him. So I've not heard bad things about Mudra loan. And the numbers speak, right? If Babus were actually holding Mudra loans back, how can hundreds of millions of people get Mudra loan, right? It's not hundreds of millions, but about in tons of millions range, right? Tens of 50, 60 Mudra loans have been disbursed as of now. Let me check. Total number of Mudra loans disbursed. 52 crore. 52 crore is 5 crore is 50 million. 52 crore is 100 million. 500 million. So 500 million loans. I was right. So 500 million loans, and those loans don't even have a default rate, which is bad, right? So the provisions were just about 2%, which is great, man, which is awesome. So Mudra loans have been a great scheme. Moving on. Electronics goods. I can't find mobile phones, smartphone GST. Let me find smartphone GST. Smartphone GST, because we made a prediction, right? GST reforms. Uh, it's an essential smartphone GST reform. Where is? I want to know. Smartphone. What about smartphone? As for smartphone, there is no relief until now. 18% GST. So smartphones didn't get any relief. No, disbursed, total loans disbursed. Uh, Number of loans, Mr. Tiwari. So it can't be 52 crore applicants. No, so many people place different loans, right? In a staggered way. It's not just one loan that a person can take, right? Total number of mudra loans disbursed. Sanctioned over 52 crore loans worth 32 lakh crore. Yeah, that's the official government figure. So official, it's like audited government figure. So smartphones didn't get any relief, guys. Now, does that line up with what we believed was gonna happen? So we said, right, is every industry wants 5% GST, but would smartphones be getting that GST rebate? Because we calculated how much money the government is gonna lose just on smartphones if it essentially brought them from 18% to 5%, right? We calculated that number, right? 150 million smartphones. We calculated some $10,000 per a smartphone. If there's $10,000 per smartphone, the country is making $10,000, 10,000 rupees times 150 million. So 10,000 times 15 crore. 15 crore times 10,000. And 20% of that. So let's say 2,000 times 15 crores. So the government was going to lose some 30,000 crores if government had rationalized the smartphone GST play, and the government couldn't have lost so much of money, right? That would have been a lot of money. So we said it looks unlikely, and they didn't get that. So our prediction was right in that case. But very difficult prediction. Maybe the government says, no, let's help these guys as well. We don't need the money, right? Cement, grocery, everything is going to be cheap. Life insurance, zero GST, so on and so forth. Faster refunds, tourism, tax on room tariffs, under 7,500 cut to 5%. Look at what they're doing as far as the whole hospitality place considered. Rooms under 7,500 to be having a GST of 5%. 7.5 is pretty big for a cap, right? It's amazing. So 5% GST, that's pretty interesting. Tax on drones going down. The CEO of Mahindra & Mahindra says tax revamp to add 30 basis points to GDP. 30 basis points to GDP growth. So if, let's say, India is growing at 6.3, 6.5, he says that India is going to grow to 6.8. That is 0.3% of, the whole growth angle is considered, right? So if you look at Indian GDP, it's $4.2 trillion. And what Mr. Anish Shah, Group CEO, MD, Mahindra & Mahindra is saying that this would lead to a 0.3% of growth. $4.2 trillion, 1% would be $42 billion. 0.3% would be some $10 to $15 billion. I think he's underestimating. Honestly, I think he's underestimating. The math could be hard, but this is definitely a very conservative estimate, right? It would lead to much more growth than $10 billion, unless I'm wrong about something. 4.2 trillion, 10% would be 400 billion. Yeah, 1% would be 42 billion, and 30%, 0.3% would be some, yeah. So no, I think it's gonna be much bigger than that. I think would be a better range would be like 0.8%, something of that sort. That could be the ripple effect of it. But that math is very calculated. Moving on. Jane Street is fighting back with SEBI. It has moved SAT. SAT is the appellate tribunal. It says that SEBI had asked for NSE, and SEBI and NSE had shared data as far as Jane Street's audits were considered, their trading activities considered. And Jane Street asked for that data. They said, what did you find in that data? And SEBI twice didn't give them that data. And they are going to court saying that, hey, they didn't find anything wrong with our calls. And they still banned us. And we are going to SAT. You've got to be fair and transparent. Now, who's going to make money on all this, right? While all this happens, who's going to make money on all this? Lawyers are going to make money, right? Lawyers are going to make money. And lawyers are going to make a lot of money. Because Jane Street, the amount of money Jane Street made from Indian equities in just a couple of years or something is about $4 billion. So Jane Street has a lot of money, right? And they are going to court. Moving on. More trouble at IndusInd. Ex-CFO seeks removal of board chairman. So IndusInd, a Hinduja promoted company. Hindujas are the same guys who trafficked a bunch of Indian poor people to work as maids in their Switzerland home. That's where they live. And they didn't even pay them minimum wage. And they kept them in the basement, made them work 18 hours a day, kept their passport so they couldn't even escape, and so on and so forth. And then some whistleblower screwed them up and they lost the case also. Those guys, the company is facing more troubles because the CFO has said that I took the brunt. He's written a letter to the PM that, hey, I took the brunt while I pointed out long-standing problems with the company. So the matter is escalated much. It's extraordinary. Moving on, metal stocks shine on China curbs demand recovery. So China is essentially, basically controlling its demand production. The brokerage said China is set to reduce its steel capacity in a move likely to improve profitability for Indian metals. So China is essentially looking at something called anti-involution plan, set to reduce its steel capacity by 50 million tons in calendar year 25, aiming to cut production by 8.5% for the rest of year. China cutting steel production 8.5% is good news for every steel manufacturing across the world, player across the world, right? We've talked about that. Moving on. Agro-pesticide companies have been doing very well, the stocks. Urban Clap is debuting, it's approved, and it's going public at a $1.7 billion valuation. $1.7 billion. That is a gentleman's valuation. You got to give them credit. I'll write an article about it. Urban Clap was valued at $2.1 billion years ago. They raised money at a $2.1 billion valuation many years ago, 3 years ago probably, right? And they still chose to value themselves at $1.7 billion for the public market. You know what it's called? It's called keeping money on the table. It's called keeping money on the table. So there are people, let's say Paytm, who just took every bit of money, right? And they kept it for themselves. They valued themselves at $20 billion, which was like bizarre. But they valued themselves at $20 billion, and retail investors lost their shirts and pants and panties, right? But what happened, and the same was the case with Lenskart, who was looking at valuing itself at $10 billion. Before I wrote that article, now it says some $8 to $9 billion maybe. But $8 to $9 billion is still pretty steep. Why $8 to $9 billion? Because the last fundraise secondary transaction happened at $5 billion. That was the play. Urban Clap had the last transaction essentially at $2.1 billion, and the company has only grown from strength to strength in that time, right? What that means is that the company could have valued itself at, let's say, $2.5 billion, $2.8 billion, and it would have flown. It would have flown with people. It would have done PR, and it would have had some sort of great news generated, and maybe institutions would have actually bought it. Retail investors might have been a bit scared, but the company didn't choose to do that at all. You got to cheer this kind of a company. First of all, so ethical, operating at a very difficult market, no competition, literally no competition, right? Basically, no competition. No competition is going to happen because grit is not a replicable business strategy, right? An urban club is all about grit. So no competition in the foreseeable future as well. No, less dependence on e-commerce players for selling its products because it has a native base of people, right? Uh, so a lot of green opportunities and a lot of good opportunities for opportunity for anybody who participates, who chooses to trust the company. I'm not giving any share advice, of course. I don't want to get screwed by SEBI for no reason. But yeah, got to appreciate those guys a lot, a lot. They deserve all the appreciation. Small cars to remain Maruti's core, SUVs to help gain market share. SUVs are now 50% of Maruti. They say small cars are going to be core, but we're launching a lot of SUVs. Good volumes is what we're gonna do. Japan's Daibiru Corp plans to invest in India's data center biz. They've already spent a lot of money on real estate. 2,000 crores they've invested already in real estate. They're gonna invest more. Data center is a very big real estate play, right? Uh, Hunch takes over Jamie Oliver India restaurants. So IMM used to be, they run a lot of brands. Now the US play has exited totally, and now it's totally Oliver, a Hunch entity. Not a big news for people who don't care, but a signal that something is happening as far as the QSR chain is considered, and something not that good. Otherwise, why would a company exit in 10 years if the market was burgeoning like that? Moving on, some action at private equity firms. Vodafone we've discussed. It is a perpetual dumpster fire truck. JSW Cement is looking at boosting capacity 65% by 2028. JSW has to be probably the biggest success story of Indian family ecosystem in the last 10 years, I guess, right? Who else can claim that spot? I don't think anybody comes close. JSW Steel, now cement, now paints, cars. They're going to enter cars. They have diversified themselves. They are in US. They are across the world, man. So JSW is really moving forward. Delhi government has kept the EV subsidies with itself. It hasn't paid EV subsidies to people even after many years. Now, what Delhi government said was that there's no specific timeline that we have to follow. So we'll pay some other time, right? But it's been 4 years. So High Court has said that this is not a ground for keeping somebody's money. You'll have to clear those pending payments without excuses, right? Center drafts urban decongestion policy, seeks states' views, making ring roads for cities with over a lakh population. Moving on, cannabis-based meds give a new high to India's wellness market. Boheco is a company which is being mentioned here, one of the first companies in the play. Cannabis-based oils, stress relievers, and so on and so forth. They have been a part of Ayush, Ministry of Ayurveda, and Ayush Ministry. So they've been doing well under the radar, but these regulations have become clearer in the recent days, which is leading to a serious growth as far as this particular market is considered. I do think that it's always good to have alternate medicines. That also reduces the government's or the country's expenditure on, scientific, like let's say modern medicine, science, as they say. Moving on. Quick commerce company First Club has raised $23 million. I don't know why, man. Why? RIR to set up a 618 crore, that's almost $800 million Right? No. $80 million. Silicon carbide facility in Odisha. That's very, very good news, right? Jacobs Wadla Moody, American engineering services company Jacobs, has said India is a good place for us to invest. Now, this is basically an extension of what happened at Semiconductor, you know, Semicon, the festival, Indian exhibition that happened. A lot of those companies, ASML and so on and so forth, these guys, Tokyo Electron, we discussed about these people yesterday. They've said that they're going to invest in India. That's Mr. Modi's pitch. India most promising place for chip firms. PM tells CEOs. He really needs the money. We really need the money. Good job on the pitch. 1.4 million drivers to do AI tasks. Uber has given data labeling operation. So they've basically crowdsourced their data labeling operation. Drivers can earn a few extra bucks by labeling, like this has a tree, this has this and that. So to train their AI play. Moving on. Uncertainty hits IT. Hiring demands fall 10%. Falls 10% in August. So demand from IT services has dropped further with total active volume of 43,000 opening. This is down 9% from previous month and 24% lower from September 2024. Current demand reflects a 41% drop compared to September 2022. Overall tech jobs stood at 1 lakh openings, down 1% from August and 24% year on year low. Global tensions, shrinking spends push tech hiring into prolonged slowdown, says companies like Team Lease and so on and so forth. Now, who told you this? Who told you like 100 days ago that something like this is going to happen when the news wasn't bad? Do you remember who told you? Do you remember who told you? I want to talk like Robert De Niro in this aspect. Do you remember what I told you? I knew you were. You remember what I told you? I don't know if you get the movie reference, but it's Casino, Martin Scorsese, Joey Pesci. You remember what I told you? I knew you were gonna do it anyway, but do you remember what I told? No, so it was basically me. The answer is me. I told you. But anyway, this brings us to the end of the 102nd episode of Thinker's Frequency. I'm sorry for the technical glitch. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure what happened. I'll check. Maybe Zoom started interfering with OBS, and because it interfered with OBS, OBS closed down. And because OBS uses the phone, OBS links the laptop to the phone for microphone and camera, it all went down, right? And I had to create another stream. I'm really sorry for that. But I hope you had fun. I definitely had fun. Mr. Patil, Mr. Tiwari, Mr. Tarun, Mr. Mittal, everybody else who joined, thank you so much. Mr. Patil, I read your comments, beautiful comments, and we're going to talk a lot, all about that in the next episode or so. You talked about LIC, you talked about bond yields. I'm glad you liked the episode after it was telecasted. But we're going to have all those discussions. I'll try to be early tomorrow. I'll try to be at 8 tomorrow so we can have a slightly longer episode and we can discuss everything. So have a beautiful day. I wish you all a beautiful day personally and professionally. I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. Thank you so much, everybody. Always fun talking. Take care. Bye-bye.